Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana. Jamanatira Vanachadi. Jamanatira Vanachadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana. Jamanatira Vanachadi. Jamanatira Vanachadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astattarasata Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Gaur Premanandi. You're not going to use that camera again, are you? No. Him. That was a warning. Please don't. Okay. So in case you haven't been keeping up with our classes, I'll just give you a review. We're hovering around Canto 10, Chapter 12, text number 11. And it's a very important verse, and so there's a lot of commentary on this very important verse, and this evening we'll be able to complete the whole section. It's Krishna's in Vrindavan. Chapter 11 is he moves to Vrindavan from Gokul and does a number of nice things with cowherd boys. And then chapter 12 opens with it's the story of killing of Aghasura, but it doesn't, that comes later. The beginning part is the cowherd boys going out to play with the calves. And do you remember? Yeah, I'm sure you remember. How many cowherd boys are there? Remember the discussion? How many calves? Remember the discussion? Asankhataha. Remember that discussion? Maybe it was elsewhere. Asankhataha means it's too many to count. And then our acharyas give the breakdown. Anyways, there's too many to count calves. Something like 10 million cowherd boys. Ooh. So it's a big herd of calves. So they're playing. So the beginning of the chapter is they leave, and then there's 4 or 5 verses that describe what they do together, and they're doing children's activities together, little boy activities, and really amazing ways of playing. And then this verse comes. It starts, itam satam sukha, Brahma sukha. So go to the verse. Itam satam Brahma sukhanubrutya. The last line is krita punya punja. We'll say it together. Comes a few times this evening. And just in summary, because it covers this in different ways, but there's way up here is the cowherd boys. Then there's 3 other categories that are described. The Gyanis that are realizing Krishna as Brahmasukha, the happiness of Brahman realization. That's the extent of their ability to understand the same object or personality as Krishna. It's just Brahmasukha, Brahman effulgence. There's devotees, Dasya Bhav, worshippers of servants of Bhagavan, and they have their realization. And those persons who have taken shelter of Maya, they have a different realization. They see him as an ordinary child. And so he who is the supreme realization for these different categories of people, the cowherd boys are very, very special. They have the opportunity just to be with him all day long, playing with the personality of Godhead. So that's the focus, and we're going to read just a few commentaries. This one happened, the first one, happens to be a commentary on Bhagavad-Gita from chapter 11. The chapter 11 is the universal form chapter. And the verse and the purport of Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 11, text number 8. Krishna says, "You cannot see me with your present eyes, therefore I give you divine eyes, behold my mystic opulence." And reference to this same verses in the purport. A pure devotee does not see Krishna in any form except his form with two hands. A devotee must see his universal form by his grace, not with the mind, but with spiritual eyes. To see the universal form of Krishna, Arjuna is told not to change his mind, but his vision. The universal form of Krishna is not very important, semicolon. That will be clear in subsequent verses. Yet, because Arjuna wanted to see it, the Lord gives him the particular vision required to see that universal form. Paragraph. Devotees who are correctly situated in a transcendental relationship with Krishna are attracted by loving features, not a godless display of opulences. The playmates of Krishna, the friends of Krishna, and the parents of Krishna never want Krishna to show his opulences. They are so immersed in pure love that they do not even know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In their loving exchange, they forget that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the boys who play with Krishna are all highly pious souls, and after many, many births, they are able to play with Krishna. Such boys do not know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They take him as a personal friend. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami recites this verse. So this is the 10, 12, 11 verse, if you like finding these things on your handheld device. 10, 12, 11. Itam satam brahma sukhanubrutya dasyam katanam paradaivatena maya shatanam naradarakena sakam prajru krita punya punja punja. Translation. Here is the Supreme Person who is considered, this is Sukadeva, who is considered the impersonal Brahman by great sages, the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotees, a product of material nature by ordinary men. Now, these boys, who have performed many, many pious activities in their past lives, are playing with that Supreme Personality of Godhead. The fact is that the devotee is not concerned with seeing the Vishwarup, the universal form, but Arjuna wanted to see it to substantiate Krishna's statements, so that was statements in chapter 10. He's the supreme source of everything. To substantiate Krishna's statements, so that in the future people could understand that Krishna not only theoretically or philosophically presented himself as the Supreme, but actually presented himself as such to Arjuna. Arjuna must confirm this, because Arjuna is the beginning of the Parampara system. Those who are actually interested in understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, and who follow in the footsteps of Arjuna, should understand that Krishna not only theoretically presented himself as the Supreme, but actually revealed himself as the Supreme. The Lord gave Arjuna the necessary power to see his universal form, because he knew that Arjuna did not particularly want to see it, as we have already explained. Now, this same verse is going to be referenced in multiple other places. There's two of them that are in chapter 8. And chapter 8 is Krishna showing the universal form of the universe within his mouth to Mother Jasoda. It's the eating dirt pastime. So this is reference to our Itam Satam Brahma Sukhana Bhritya. That verse is being referred to in this purport. That's why we're reading it. Krishna said to his mother, "My dear mother, I've never eaten dirt. All my friends complaining against me are liars. If you think they're being truthful, you can directly look into my mouth and examine it." And purport, Krishna presented himself as an innocent child to increase the transcendental ecstasy of maternal affection. As described in the Shastra, Tadana Banyan Mityuktur Vatsalya Rasa Prokshika. This means that sometimes a small child speaks lies. For example, he may have stolen something or eaten something and yet denied that he has done so. We ordinarily see this in the material world, but in relation to Krishna it is different. Semicolon. Such activities are meant to endow the devotee, Mother Jasoda, with transcendental ecstasy. The Supreme Personality of Godhead was playing as a liar and accusing all the other devotees of being liars. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 10, 12, 11, Krita Punya Punja. A devotee may attain such an ecstatic position after many, many births of devotional service. Persons who have amassed the results of a vast amount of pious activities can attain the stage of associating with Krishna and playing with him like ordinary playmates. One should not consider these transactions of devotional service to be untruthful accusations. One should never accuse such devotees of being ordinary boys speaking lies, for they attained this stage of associating with Krishna by great austerities. Tapasya brahmacharjena samena cha damena cha, referencing 6th canto. So now, that was chapter 8. We're going to get 2 references from chapter 13. And what's chapter 13? It's the pastime involved with the Brahma Vimohan Lila. Okay? So this is the purport for text 8, chapter 13. To a pure devotee, Krishna is always visible, as stated in the Brahma Samhita, Santaksa Daiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti, and as indicated by Krishna himself in the Bhagavad-Gita. Sarvatak Pani Padam Tat Sarvatokshi Shiromukam. If, by accumulating pious activities, Krita Punya Punja, one can be raised to the platform of devotional service, Krishna is always visible in the core of one's heart. One who has attained such perfection is all beautiful in transcendental bliss. The present Krishna consciousness movement is an attempt to keep Krishna at the center. For if this is done, all activities will automatically become beautiful and blissful. And again, reading these because this celebrated verse is being referenced. Later in the chapter, it's describing the vision of Brahma. There's the cowherd boys, and each of the cowherd boys manifesting forms of Narayan, and it's describing the forms of Narayan. Every part of their bodies, from their feet up to the top of their heads, was fully decorated with fresh, tender garlands of tulsi leaves offered by devotees engaged in worshipping the Lord by the greatest pious activities, namely hearing and chanting. Purport. The word Buddhi Punyavad Arpitaha is significant in this verse. These forms of Vishnu were worshipped by those who had performed pious activities, Sukritabihi, for many births, and who were constantly engaged in devotional service. Bhakti, devotional service, is the engagement of those who have performed highly developed pious activities. The accumulation of pious activities has already been narrated elsewhere in the Bhagavatam. Guess where? 10, 12, 11. Where Shukadeva Goswami says, he doesn't give the Sanskrit, those who are engaged in self-realization, this is the translation, this is the Satam, the Gyanis, those who are engaged in self-realization, appreciating the Brahman effulgence of the Lord, and those engaged in devotional service, accepting the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Master, Dasya, as well as those who are under the clutches of Maya, thinking the Lord an ordinary person, cannot understand that certain exalted personalities, after accumulating volumes of pious activities, are now playing with the Lord in friendship as cowherd boys. Prabhupada's concluding paragraph. In our Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, there is a tamal tree that covers an entire corner of the courtyard. Before there was a temple, the tree was lying neglected, but now it has developed very luxuriantly, covering the whole corner of the courtyard. This is the sign of Buddhi Punya. It's just sitting there, but it's hearing the kirtan, the sound vibration, and accumulating Buddhi Punya. And then later in the same chapter, seeing everything that he saw, Brahma fell unconscious. And then, text 58 from chapter 13, Lord Brahma's external consciousness then revived, and he stood up, just like a dead man coming back to life. Opening his eyes with great difficulty, he saw the universe, along with himself. And purport, we actually do not die. At death, we are merely kept inert for some time, just like during sleep. At night, we sleep, and all our activities stop, but as soon as we arise, our memory immediately returns, and we think, oh, where am I? What do I have to do? This is called Suptotita Nyaya. Suppose we die. Die, unquote, unquote, means that we become inert for some time and then again begin our activities. This takes place life after life according to our karma or activities and swabhava or nature by association. Now, in the human life, if we prepare ourselves by beginning the activity of our spiritual life, we return to our real life and attain perfection. Otherwise, according to karma, swabhava, prakriti, and so on, our varieties of life and activities continue. And so, also do our birth and death. As explained by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Mayara Vashe Yache Beshe Kache Habu Dububai Kacha Habu Dububai. My dear brothers, translation, my dear brothers, why are you being washed away with the waves of Maya? Paragraph. One should come to the spiritual platform And then one's activities will be permanent. Krita punya punja. This stage is attained after one accumulates the results of pious activities for many, many lives. Janma koti sukritayar na labhyate. The Krishna consciousness movement wants to stop koti janma, repeated birth and death. In one birth, one should rectify everything and come to permanent life. That was pretty easy. This is Krishna consciousness. So that Janma Koti Sukritayar Na Labhyate is from Madhya Lila, chapter 8, text 70, and this verse, same verse we just, Krita Punya Punja, is referred to in 6 verses later. So this is a translation. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita's translation of this verse from chapter 12. Neither those engaged in self-realization of appreciating the Brahman effulgence of the Lord, nor those engaged in devotional service while accepting the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Master, nor those under the clutches of Maya thinking the Lord an ordinary person, can understand that certain exalted personalities, after accumulating volumes of pious activities, are now playing with the Lord in friendship as cowherd boys. And that's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada's purport. This is a statement made by Shukadeva Goswami, 10-12-11, who appreciated the good fortune of the cowherd boys who played with Krishna and ate with him on the banks of the Yamuna. And then it's referenced again in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or Nectar of Devotion, speaking about categories of friends with Krishna. I'll just read. This is Krishna's friends speaking to him after he's been lifting the Govardhan hill for 7 days. They say, "You have spent 7 nights standing constantly without sleep holding up Govardhan? You must be very tired." "Oh, my friend, Krishna, throw the mountain into Sridham's hand. Our minds are very disturbed seeing you in this condition. At least place the mountain in your right hand, then we'll be able to massage your left hand." A verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Jiva Goswami comments, "These are the cowherd boyfriends speaking to Krishna. On seeing the display of the Lord's powers, they become instead absorbed in considerations mentioned in this verse. This verse indicates sammatva bhavena maya sneha, or affection, sneha, generated by the thought of the Lord as an equal. So that's a certain kind of friendship. Then there's another kind of friendship, the friendship of playing together. That's then comes our verse, Yatam Satam Brahmasukana Bhritya verse. Here is the Supreme Person, who is considered the impersonal Brahman by great sages, a most worshipable form by the Dasya Bhaktas, and the son of a human being by ordinary man. Now these boys who perform many, many pleasing activities in their past lives are playing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of a cowherd boy." And there's a long commentary. Jiva Goswami explains the verse. Satam means, quote, "of those who have realized the highest form of existence," or by proximity to the word Brahma, the word Sat describes Brahman. Thus, Satam indicates those who have realized Brahman. In either case, Satam refers to the Gyanis. And in the verse, the word is there, the first line, Anubhuti. So, Itam Satanam Brahma Sukha Anubhuti. Anubhuti means a self-revealing object, such as perception or consciousness, as opposed to dull matter. This consciousness itself is happiness, since it is the shelter of an attributeless prema without qualities. Brahman, produced through realization of Atma. That consciousness is also called Brahman, meaning the greatest, since it is the ultimate essence of everything. This is the explanation of the phrase Brahma Sukhanubhuti. Sukhanubhuti. Gyanis realize the Lord as a self-revealing object, which is happiness, and it's called Brahman, the greatest. Brahma Sukhanubhutya. So then the next line. Those who possess Dasya Bhakti, Dasyam Gatanam, they realize the Lord as a form, which is supremely worshipable, para, daivatena, filled with all powers. The Lord is realized in this form in order that people see His greatness. To show that both these types of realization are very rare, the verse then says that those who have fallen under the control of material illusion, mayashritanam, see the Lord only as a human child because they lack both jnana and bhakti. The Brahmanas failed to recognize, this is the pastime of the cowherd boys going to the Brahmanas for something to eat. The Brahmanas, this is the translation of a verse from that chapter 23. The Brahmanas failed to recognize that He is the supreme absolute truth, the directly manifest personality of Godhead, whom the material senses cannot ordinarily perceive. Thus, bewildered by their false identification with the mortal body, they did not show Him proper respect. Then, paragraph, but the cowherd boys played with the Lord. Sadridham. He awarded them His association, being controlled by His own prema for them. Though He appeared in a human form, that form surpassed in sweetness the sweetness of all other forms. The cowherd boys played with that form of the Lord. Therefore, these boys must have done piles of pious actions in previous lives. This is the meaning from the common material point of view, but actually they perform piles of pleasing punya actions which caused the highest mercy of the Lord. Amar Kosh Dictionary says, punyas to charu. Punya means pleasing. If one is particularly inquisitive, one can consult Vaishnava Toshani commentary on this verse. Vaishnava Toshani is Jiva Goswami's commentary just on the 10th canto. So Jiva Goswami is making a commentary on these two different types of friends. And if you want to know more about it, you can go there, he says. And we're almost done. This is another reference, Rupa Goswami from Nectar of Devotion, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In the state of devotional happiness, the person who is perceiving, the person perceived the varied perceptions and the sensory functions that serve in those perceptions all manifest themselves in various ways. It's a little complicated, but that's Rupa Goswami's teaching, and here's commentary. The Bhakti Shastras have already proven that the bliss of devotional service to the Supreme Lord is much greater and more sublime than the shadow of happiness found in the meditation of self-contented impersonalists. Now the Shastras reconfirm this conclusion with yet another logical argument. In the bliss of devotional service, all components of personal experience are vividly manifest, namely, the devotee who is perceiving the joy of devotional service, the personality of Godhead who is the object of this perception, the particular exchanges involving the two of them, and the sensory activities that foster the perceptions. The devotee realizes, oh, I am the Lord's servant. And more specifically, he identifies himself with particular services, like massaging the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord, who engages the devotee's attention, displays many wonderful, attractive characteristics of bodily beauty, charming behavior, and so on. The devotee's sensory functions manifest themselves variously through hearing, chanting, and other modes of service. All these contributors to the devotional experience display infinite varieties and sub-varieties. Thus, the happiness of pure devotion includes limitless variety. No other taste can equal it. Then he goes in a different direction. It is a poor argument to say that a devotee's awareness of himself and his own senses impedes his blissful awareness of the Lord's lotus feet. A pure devotee's self-awareness is an integral part of his awareness of the Lord. He sees himself not as a separate being, but as a person having an intimate relationship with the Lord. There is no natural law against simultaneously knowing the Supreme Lord in oneself, nor is self-awareness obscured by awareness of the Supreme. Consciousness of one's subordinate role as the Lord's servant is perfectly consistent with awareness of the Lord and his all-attractive qualities. We're almost done. If a person in God consciousness were oblivious of his own existence, he might as well no longer exist at all. Just as a jewel one has completely forgotten might as well not be on one's neck. Therefore, in describing self-realization, the authorized scriptures constantly use such words as anubhuti, namely perception, as in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10, 12, 11, itam satam brahma sukhanubhutya, anubhuti, perception, brahma sukha anubhuti. And that's it for this section. We're ready to move on to the next verse. I've spent maybe 10 days just on that. It's so important. Because it's so important, there are certain verses that are referenced again and again. Prabhupada, from just hearing his lectures, sometimes he would often just take that last phrase, Krita Punya Punja. With a kind of admiration for the good fortune of the cowherd boys. But when doing so, it doesn't mean that the cowherd boys, compared to all the other residents of Vrindavan, are more favored by Krishna or than any of the other residents of Vrindavan. In fact, tomorrow morning we're going to be reading some section where, no, it won't be tomorrow morning, where in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna is describing the affection of the Gopis. It's really, it's very ecstatic, but it's so, and he's speaking, he's perfectly aware, at least as he's speaking with Uddhava, he's perfectly aware of the happiness he's feeling and the happiness they're feeling, and the total dedication they have to him, and in that total dedication, his total dedication to them, and it's he's appreciating them. He's appreciating their love for him. He's appreciating because this Bhagavad-Gita is spoken just before Krishna's departure. You know the sequence? Krishna's in Dwarka, and because he returns to Dwarka after killing some demons, particularly after killing Shishupal and Dantavakra. And then Acharyas say, according to many references, particularly Padma Purana reference, Krishna goes to Vrindavan for 2 months. And when he's in Vrindavan for 2 months, he's still looking young, although his age is 125 years. His body is looking like a 12-year-old. And then they make the references when Krishna was in Dwaraka and Pradyumna, his son, who was just 12 years old, entered, they thought it was Krishna. And so they became, a little careful. And then they realized, no, it's not Krishna, it's Pradyumna, because their age looked the same. Now, what a 125-year-old looks like a 12-year-old. But Krishna, his form is, he can appear however people have love for him. That's how he can appear. So he went to Vrindavan, spent 2 months. He engaged in rasa dance with the gopis to their heart's content. He describes to Uddhava that the nights spent with the gopis, to them, passed like a moment. And then the days when he wasn't with them, it was like a night of Brahma. But when you're having fun, time goes quickly, and when it's like really awful, it takes forever. You know how that goes. So it's just the perception of passage of time for the gopis. A moment's association seemed like, Yugayitam Nimeshena. We discussed that this morning. Nimesha, little detour. Nimesha is translated as a moment. And then in the third canto of Bhagavatam, it's very specific. It's 8/5 of a second. No, 5/8 of a second. 5/8 of a second. 5/8 of a second. Slightly more than half a second. That's one nimesha. Like a blink. And 3 blinks makes the next one. Kshanta. No. Kshanik. Kshana. Pratikshana. Shana. So he went back, and after 2 months, he made arrangements for the Prakat Lila to end. And so the residents of Vrindavan eternally entered into their Prakat pastimes, uppercut pastimes, unmanifest pastimes. And Krishna took the residents of Vrindavan back to Krishna Loka. And then an expansion of Krishna, or form of Krishna, went back to Dwarka to wind up his Dwarka pastimes. So he's in Dwarka, ready to wind up his Dwarka pastimes. And Uddhava, knowing Krishna as intimately as he knows Krishna, he knows Krishna is going to leave. And Krishna wants to pacify the heart of Uddhava. We just read it this morning. Really nice description. Vishwanath Chakravarti tells how Krishna's thinking. I did these pastimes, he lists all his pastimes. But one thing I didn't do is I didn't give my association to Narayana Rishi and his devotees in Badri. But if I can describe everything to Uddhava and then give him the assignment of going there, he's really qualified, he'll realize everything, I'll empower him to realize everything. And he's so much like me anyways, he can just go in my place because my 125 years are up. My pastimes are over. So he's thinking to give Uddhava some service to go so he can sustain his life, so he can go to, very similar to what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did with different devotees. Before he left, he gave them some service so they could sustain their lives. So he gave Uddhava some service, and then he gave these detailed instructions in Dwarka. And at that time, that's when Maitreya just happened to be there and heard the whole thing too. So when Krishna's in Dwarka, I was just telling this for a particular reason.
The sequence.
Huh?
The sequence of how Krishna spoke to Uddhava.
I forgot. He left Vrindavan, went to Dwarka to end up his Dwarka pastime. He was just telling the sequence of when Uddhava was instructed. Because shortly after that, Krishna does depart. That the whole departure pastime is enacted. And there's some details, I won't go into it. I mean, a detail is Uddhava starts to go and he comes to know intuitively Krishna is just about to leave, so he comes back and he sees Krishna one more time. Krishna sends him. There's a very interesting sequence. So, there's eternal pastimes, this is the topic. There's eternal pastimes that are unmanifest, and then for some period of time Krishna manifests his pastimes so the world can see. There's a little detail that we just discussed recently. I think it came, yes, Charyanishta was asking this question. It's sometimes said that the pastimes that Krishna performs in Krishna Loka are identical with the pastimes that Krishna performs in this world. And in the ones in this world, there's some particular pastimes that are a little different. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls them Naimitika, or occasional pastimes. And then our acharyas explain, in addition to what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, that's the killing of demons is one of those, and it's for helping us overcome obstacles on the path of bhakti. But there's another reason, and the other reason is what exists in the unmanifest pastimes, and I'm reaching my hand up in the air, this is Krishna Loka up here. The pastime that Krishna performs in Krishna Loka, there's this mood or bhava that Mother Yasoda gave birth to Krishna, although there's no birth pastime. There's no demons in Krishna Loka, but there's a bhava. Uh-oh, here comes a demon. Look out. Krishna! So that, it intensifies their shelter taking. Or Krishna's leaving Vrindavan and going to Mathura. Krishna doesn't leave Vrindavan. He's always in Vrindavan. But there's this mood of separation from Krishna. And so one of the manifest pastime purposes is to restore, for these are eternal associates, that it's real. Krishna leaves Vrindavan, Mother Yasoda gives birth to Krishna, and so forth. And so, Vasudeva and Devaki, and the whole thing. It's to reconfirm that which is their natural bhava. It's done in pastime purposes, or prakat lila. So this pastime with the cowherd boys, that's the focus of this chapter, they're very special, but it's referred to, in many cases, it's not just they're very special, everyone in Vrindavan is very special. It gets a lot of attention because it's such a nice verse. But the love of Mother Yasoda and Nanda is, there's a whole series of, the whole chapters on the very special position of love of Yasoda and Nanda. And then what to speak of the Gopis. Yes, that's how I got up on that track. Krishna's explaining to Uddhava in Bhagavad-Gita, that's how I got up over there, is he's perfectly aware. I mean, when he's immersed in his pastimes, he's immersed in his pastimes in Yogamaya by his will. Yogamaya causes him to forget his divinity. Yogamaya does all kinds of things. With Balaram, with Krishna, with the Gopis. But there are times when his divinity is being expressed, and that is with Uddhava. But even so with Uddhava, he's indicating in very clear language the unique position of the Gopis. And he knows that because he also visited Vrindavan, earlier pastimes, went from Mathura to Vrindavan. But he's now giving teachings in Bhagavad-Gita that spell all of this out. And he concludes all of this by saying, after I give you this instruction, you should travel about and in a mood of complete satisfaction within, give my association to others in this way. This is Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. In a nutshell, in Krishna's instructions to Uddhava, or in Krishna's instructions to Arjuna in Bhagavad-Gita. It's the preliminary and then the more mature stage of receive, and then in this mood of detachment from the temporary, absorbed in appreciation of the love that Krishna has and exhibits in the spiritual realm, take this and distribute it everywhere. That was Krishna's instruction to Uddhava. It wasn't an easy instruction to fulfill because he was so attached to Krishna. But he had an instruction to fulfill. I mean, in reading that section, it just makes me think of Prabhupada being in Vrindavan. And he left Vrindavan to come to New York City. In the winter. And he didn't have a place to stay. He had a little room. He had no windows, no water, no toilet, no sink. Just a room, like a little office, without any windows, no air, no money. I mean, in the morning after a certain time when Dr. Mishra was up, he would go take his bath and then cook, offer to Krishna one meal a day, have some discussion, go back and do whatever he was doing. So incredible austerity but having a mission to fulfill, that's what propelled him, as well as, understanding what he understood about detachment and the suffering that people are undergoing unnecessarily, and trying to give them the highest thing. Who can understand what his consciousness was? But anyway, so back to 10th Canto Bhagavatam. The message is there, sifting through it. It says the all-attractive Krishna is being appreciated in the verses spoken by Shukadeva Goswami about who he is, and his loving exchanges, and his the opulence that he carried, but how insignificant to him was his opulence compared to the loving exchanges with his devotees. And he had the resident of Vrindavan convinced. Yeah, he's powerful, but don't go beyond that. He's empowered by Narayan, that's it. When he's separated from us, he cries. He goes and steals. He lies, eats dirt. He's God. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. That's chapter 12.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I was attending Gita camp and someone answered my question as long as you chant, all your attachments will go away. And my question is, how will my attachments go away when I chant?
Well, it's not just the act of chanting. I mean, there's a mechanical chanting and there's a devotional chanting, but leaving that to the side for a moment, there's potencies, cleansing potencies and attracting potencies within that sound vibration, and that's how it happens. How is it that the rays of the sun purify an impure place? Let's say, a puddle of urine. So by the power of the sun, it draws out the water and leaves behind the impurity. There's potency within the rays of the sun to evaporate the water and leave the rest behind. So within the name and the form and the qualities and the pastimes and everything, there's potency. The potency to cleanse, Chaitadarpana Marjanam, because the contamination is in primarily the mind and the senses. Of course, we know from Bhagavad-Gita that intelligence is also sitting places. But the material, the faculties that we use to function every day, every moment, all the time, they're covered or contaminated by Maya. And so the power of Krishna's name is to remove that contamination, like the power of light is to drive away darkness. So it drives away darkness, but it illumines. So Krishna's name has that potency. So there's degrees of receiving that potency, more or less. And part of it is how covered we are, but another part of it is how the description. This isn't. I'm over answering your question now. You didn't ask like how to get more purification, but it's essentially it's faith. Because with faith comes greater attentiveness.
Thank you, Marge, but I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
How do you get faith?
How to get faith? Well, faith is intrinsic to the soul. There's a whole chapter in Bhagavad-Gita on that. And faith in Krishna comes from associating with those that have faith in Krishna. Just like, driving around downtown, I wasn't surprised. It didn't take long to figure out what's going on. So many stores have big plywood boards over the windows. So how do those people do stuff like that? Just like break the glass and vandalize? By associating with people that do that. That's how it happens. How does a drunkard become a drunkard? Goes and hangs out with people that drink. And initially it's uncomfortable. People that smoke a cigarette, it's like they cough and cough, and then they just become addicted. So by association, one develops qualities. So how do you develop faith is by associating with those who are faithful. And there's another principle. The other principle, another principle, is by acting in knowledge. When you get real knowledge and you say, well, let me try it out, you get a realization. Wow, it was right. So that increases your faith in where the knowledge came from. But when you act in knowledge, it strengthens faith. And otherwise, it's theoretical. So, knowledge alone is not enough. You have to act on it, and then you get some realization. Jnana vijnana. Realize knowledge. Just like that little project when I was visiting your home, building the engine. Okay, that's what an engine. So let me put one together. Now you have a lot more understanding of what an engine is than before you put it together. That's the practical application thing. So that's one of the ways of increasing faith, acting in knowledge. So let's see what happens. Enough faith, and let me see what happens. And then if that faith increases, then it's not just let me see what happens. It's like, wow, this is really good stuff. And it grows. And I think fundamental point is, it's already there. It's not like acquiring something from outside. It's awakening something that's already there. Like, I don't know, some people are good at basketball. You know, it's even the people that are good at basketball, they practice a lot. They're good at anything, you practice a lot. Good at violin playing, good at, at anything, you practice a lot. But some people, they practice a lot, they're really not so good at basketball or playing violin or something they practice a lot. You have to practice. But, there's an endowment to some people that's on the physical or psychophysical side. But on the spiritual side, it's already there. Faith is already there. It's covered. So how do you awaken faith? You kick it a couple times. Ooh. Okay, I'm faithful. And sometimes it happens that way. We get into a difficult situation, and we realize help, and so the faith that's already there comes out.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Guru Maharaj, the Sanskrit term you mentioned, Krita Punya Punja, pious activities for millions of lifetimes. Reflecting to that, it seems to me to attain that stage, it's more than 99%. It's just a mercy of Guru, founder of Acharya, and Krishna. To my own journey, that's how I'm relating. It's more than sadhana. It's leaning towards more kripa in it. Is my understanding correct, Guru Maharaj?
Well, why separate the two?
The definition in my system, the sadhana is more of a practice from A stage to B stage to C stage. It's more of a better term. It's more of stages, I would see it.
There are stages. Of course there are stages. But why separate the two? Stages is stages of consciousness, or even you can say stages of faith. Because, so, it's the same as theoretical jnana vijnana. Prabhupada, speaking on those two terms, there's theoretical and there's practical. And he would speak commonly about, you learn something in a science class, and then you go to the laboratory, you do the experiment. And you go, oh, that's how it works. So if it just remains theoretical, it's not the same as practical. The practical is you put in practice. And that put in practice, that's sadhana. There's the theory, and then you put it in practice. But practice alone is not enough. But if we don't practice, how are you going to access mercy? They're not separate. Practical application. Practical application invites mercy. Or say it differently. If I want some sunshine, I have to go out in the sunshine. I can't stay indoors. It's all mercy. Or 90%, 99%, or whatever it is. It's both. Don't separate them. The sun is shining, step outdoors. Krishna is merciful. Qualify yourself to receive his mercy. That's the topic I'm being asked to speak about tomorrow. At this Naperville, Sunday. Naperville Sunday program.
Thank you very much.
Serve to become qualified to serve. And it doesn't say millions of lifetimes, by the way.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
something else here?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Krishna. Yeah, today I like that you mentioned like Uddhava versus Prabhupada, right? You compared. I like that. So from today I'll think it that way. Thank you, Maharaj. And my question is this, Maharaj. Like, I'll try my best to explain it. My question. This term, like, think positive, right? So before Krishna conscious, the person comes into Krishna conscious or understanding Krishna better. He always thinks like he learns some other books, or I'm telling about myself. So we think that like if some incident is happening, if some problem is happening, we'll think positive. Okay, this is going to end this way. I will think, and then we'll assume that if you think positive, the same way it will happen, like that in the past. So now we know that Krishna is doing everything. Everything is most as per Krishna's will and wish. So now, if some problem or something is happening, I can't decide the outcome. Like I don't know whether I can say to Krishna, I need the outcome that way. Earlier, I'm saying I want that outcome. I want that outcome. I'll think. I'll meditate. Now it is Krishna is in the picture. I'm praying to Krishna. So now the question is, Maharaj, when you say when there is a problem or something, we can't demand Krishna to answer the way I wanted it, right? So how I will pray to Krishna during those difficult times?
It's fine. You'd be a stone if you didn't have some outcome in mind. But we're dependent. So we make this is the topic, is making a plan. We have to have a plan. I wouldn't be here if we didn't have a plan. Who knows where I'd be, but I wouldn't be here. I'd have a plan, and here we are. And I'm, I didn't make the decision. But anyway, so super soul, Krishna is making arrangements. But we also have our little plan. And then Krishna moves things the way Krishna moves things. But you have to have a plan. You're not asking Krishna, please make my plan work out the way that I want it to work out. As otherwise, I'm not sure I have good faith in you. So the outcome consciousness and the power of positive thinking, it's all kartaham. It's all false ego. Yes, mind affects matter. Yes, it's a true principle. The mind, the subtle energies influence the grosser energies. It's true. Because that's true doesn't mean Krishna is out of the picture. And if Krishna is out of the picture, it doesn't mean the subtle energy doesn't influence the gross energy. But the outcome is completely up to, somebody upstairs. So I have to have a plan. And I'm dependent. So let my plan be designed, Krishna conscious life. It's really simple, because it sounds like the transition between the way that I was encouraged before, and now I'm in this space where I don't know what I'm supposed to do, because it's up to Krishna, right? But it's up to Krishna, but you have to have a plan. And best if the plan is something that you learn from Scripture. Guru Sadhu Shastra will help guide you how to have the right plan, or a Krishna conscious plan, not necessarily right versus wrong. A Krishna conscious plan. And be very flexible, ready to go in a different direction if Krishna indicates, that wasn't a good plan. Right? I'm not favoring that plan. It's an okay plan, but I want you to turn left instead of right. Okay.
Yes, Maharaj.
So have a plan.
Yes.
But don't be in false ego. And don't be an impersonalist either. Don't be a dead stone. That's not who you are. Be who you are. Your spirit soul meant for Krishna's service. So what's the plan for pleasing Krishna? Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, I have one more.
I'm ready.
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, the lecture, like Dhruva Maharaj lecture, the react versus respond.
You like that?
Yes, Maharaj, I liked a lot, actually.
Go listen to it again.
Yes, Maharaj. I listened many times. I listened as well.
Okay.
Yes, Maharaj. And we encouraged our Bhakti Riksha members as well to listen. And they also listened and shared their realization. We will share with you that
Okay,
later.
good.
What I liked in that lecture, Maharaj, like when I want to drive the car, I have to go for driving lesson, and swimming lesson. Like that, what I learned from that lecture is when I want to forgive, right, I have to learn how to forgive. So that I got it from that lecture, Maharaj.
Okay.
Like, that I liked it. I want to mention
Okay,
that.
you're sharing some appreciation. It's not exactly a question. You're just like,
No, I'm sharing.
yay. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anything online? We have some onlines. Let's do the online people, then we'll come over to you. And then there'll be some more online people.
Rama Raghava Prabhu asks, if the devotees of Vrindavan have always been associates of Krishna, then how to understand that they got the great fortune by accumulated punya?
Well, there's Nitya, Siddha, cowherd boys. And they didn't have to do anything. And then there's Sadhana Siddha, cowherd boys. There's the answer.
Sanchari asks, she has two questions. In a previous class, you had said that the inanimate objects like grass, trees, etc. are in Shanta rasa, and that our devotional practice automatically takes us at least to the Dasya platform. Because our practice itself is very active, it is difficult to imagine that anyone performing bhakti can be categorized as a Shanta Bhakta. Who are the devotees that are characterized as Shanta, and how do they enter the spiritual sky?
They're not from the Hare Krishna movement. Because we start with service. So where they come from, I don't know. How they get there, I don't know. But they're not from the ISKCON. Next.
So this question related to how Krishna appears to the pure devotees. Can it be different depending on the pure devotee's mood? Is there any comparison that can be made between Krishna's appearing to pure devotees in our inclination or attraction to particular forms of the Lord? Kind of like the Ishtadev concept.
Yeah. Krishna appears according to the devotion of his devotee. That's expressed over and over and over. That's why there's different forms of the Lord and different abodes and different Vaikuntha planets and different thises and that's. According, he's reciprocating. Go ahead.
This is from Douglas Sulick. Maharaj, you emphasize that the cowherd boys perform great tapasya in precious lives.
Previous.
It must be previous. lives in order to have attained their close association with Krishna and Vrindavan. Yet the gopis were still situated on a much higher level. Is it mentioned anywhere in scripture just how the gopis attained their unique positions?
Well, two things. One is that the pious activities does not mean, we can, give the microphone to Radhika Priya and she'll explain. No, I'll explain. This was one of your questions. One of your questions was, what kind of pious activities? And it's not, wasn't it you? No? Wasn't you? Oh, okay, somebody else. Okay, you're off the hook. It's not material piety, it refers to devotional service kind of piety. Punya, as we heard the definition from the dictionary. So it's many, 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 many lifetimes of devotional service. So that's the sadhana siddha gopis. Like, here's an example. So the person wants to know. You know from Ramayana, maybe you don't know. In Ramayana, there's some rishis in the forest that they were completely beyond the bodily conception of life, totally absorbed in the spiritual conception of life, totally austere and totally like ascetics, absorbed in transcendence. And when they saw the personality of Godhead, Lord Ram, they desired that relationship with him as a wife on the spiritual plane. And the commitment was, in the next pastime I'll appear as Krishna, and you can participate. So some of the Krishna's gopis, according to our acharyas, they're called Rishi Chari gopis. So they're not that's his question was, how do they become? By, volumes and volumes and volumes of devotional service. Like these Rishi Chari personalities. And there may be others that they're not yet perfect, but they're given the opportunity to be in the association with those who are perfect. The sadhana siddhas become kripa siddhas, become association with the nitya siddhas. I think I'm getting a little tired. I'm getting words mixed up. Go ahead. Next.
This from Giri Votikota. To get liberated or eligible to serve the Lord, Grihastha devotees should not have any material desires or should only have desire to please Krishna, or we can have mixed desires with more pleasing Krishna, less material. Sorry,
That's too complicated.
Yeah.
Gary, do some editing of your question to make it clearer and send it in later.
Maharaj, I have a practical application question. So I was thinking, our acharyas are writing so many commentaries on, especially the 10th canto that we are hearing. What would have been their expectation in writing the commentaries from their side? What would have thought in their mind to write their commentaries? The reason I'm asking is, by reading these commentaries, it's only raising a lot of questions which, I'm thinking, like, for me, a lot of questions come. What happens there in Vaikuntha? What happens there in Goloka? What happens here? I mean, it's not going to make anything or improve my spiritual life. So they should have had some thought in writing these commentaries. What would have been, and what should we focus on hearing these commentaries?
Well, the fact that you're hearing indicates something of your orientation towards godliness as opposed to material disposition. And so the fact that it's thinking more about what happens here and there and so forth means your consciousness is being directed away from the temporary and into the realm of transcendence by hearing. And even if it's you're scratching your head, your thoughts are going to transcendence instead of the temporary. And by hearing and hearing, I mean, I'll just give a little example. This morning, when I was trying to save a Word document, it wouldn't let me save it. And somehow, instead, it was being saved in Vangsidari's computer. I was puzzled. And you know, I'm a dumbo when it comes to this so I called somebody that knows, and it was 1, 2, 3, and it was taken care of. So, but you know, so your brain may be puzzled. That's okay. So what's the intent? That's the other question. Like, how should you be thinking? This is going to take my attention to transcendence. I have that faith. And how it's going to work, like your son's question, well, I just have faith. I don't know exactly how the potency of the sun evaporates water, but it evaporates water. I don't know exactly how hearing the pastimes of Krishna and chanting the holy name, how it's happening, but there's potencies. And it elevates consciousness, and it cleanses consciousness, the two sides. Material contamination becomes washed, and a higher consciousness becomes awakened, aroused, stimulated. And so that's your orientation is try to understand, you know, not by material intelligence, because then you'll quickly understand. By material intelligence, I'm not going to understand this. But you use the faculty of intelligence. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad-Gita in chapter 18? One worships me by his intelligence, just hearing it. It's not about, you know, becoming a jnani. It's bhakti. You worship Krishna in that way, trying to understand his message. And what's their intention? Same. I mean, they're relishing, and they're, you know, churning the topics with those that like to relish. That's their intention. They have faith from the other side of the stick. I mean, they know that the sound and that these topics about Krishna are so relishable, purifying, elevating. I mean, think about it. Who's going to spend their whole life making commentaries that Jiva Goswami made not just 3, but 4 commentaries on the Bhagavatam. So what was his intention? That's your question. Elevation. He's relishing, and I want to share with others so they can also relish. And there's refinement, and some persons aren't really interested in refinement. It's okay. Don't read Jiva Goswami. You know, read something else. But you know, but even if I just read it I don't have to understand it all. I just have faith. That's what Prabhupada said about Bhaktisiddhanta. When I heard him, my brain was puzzled. But I had faith. And that's my qualification today. Now I can speak. He heard with faith. Does that answer your question? Practical application?
I just have a follow-up question. Like 10 or 11 years back, when I was asking some questions, you answered that, you know, don't overthink, your hard drive will crash. I still remember it vividly. So, can I say that it's a statement more than a question? So these commentaries are so wonderful. So instead of going into how this could have happened, you know, 10 million cow herd, you know, all those things. So can we just purely hear it and enjoy it and
yeah, it's a Chincha Shakti. And, you know, then how did he fit them all? That's another one. Besides how many? How do you fit them in the space that we hear about? So, but it's, it's a Chincha Shakti. And it's like, when the sun rises in the morning and there's, the sky becomes, I was appreciating this when I was in Detroit. I don't normally see it like this. But it's not just where the sun rises, but the whole sky was becoming red. The whole sky. You're like, okay, how come I don't see that else place and I only see it up there? I don't need an answer to that question. I can be curious, but wow. Just appreciate it. And then it's gone. And the sun rises, and then it happens again the next day. It happens again the next day. Wow.
Just by relishing with faith will take us to a higher platform, will purify.
Well, faith and you add faith and unpack faith, and it includes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur teaches, without enthusiasm, faith is meaningless. So, but by saying faith, it includes enthusiasm. And enthusiasm for what? Faith for what? Like his question. So, connecting with Krishna. You feel more connected. But if you have to know what the faith in what? Making that Krishna connection stronger. And then comes some understandings that are subtle, beyond our limited faculties to understand, so we ponder them. And we continue hearing, and we hear again, and hear again, and hear again, and oh. I mean, like, you're not the body. That's a pretty simple one. How well have we realized that one? That's fundamental. And then you just keep going. So your question was, if I just go on hearing with faith, will I get there? Well, you have to have an understanding what there is. And then have some enthusiasm to get there. Okay? We have more questions, right? He just switched it off, so it's not going to happen. You have more online?
It was turned off even before.
There's no more online, Maharaj, but I think I understand Yuri's question.
Okay, go ahead.
Try. So I think his question is, he didn't clarify, but as a Grihastha devotee, what's the minimum qualification to get liberation? A, have no material desire. B, have only desire to please Krishna. Or C, have mixed desires where there's more than 50% or more pleasing Krishna mood than the material side.
Well, no material desire means spiritual desire, because we're not stones, right? No. So no material desire means spiritual desire. And so to get liberation, it's a little bit like his question. Supposing I don't really understand fully what Krishna's pleasure is, and so I'm not fully there with Krishna's pleasure, and so there's something over in this other pocket that's called, my sense pleasure. And over here, there's, for Krishna's pleasure, at least notionally. So when Krishna's pleasure becomes, the bhakti principle means Krishna's pleasure. Anukulyena means Krishna's pleasure. So as that matures, then the material attraction subsides. So liberation means where material attraction has subsided. Liberation isn't like 50%. Liberation is you're satisfied within. It doesn't mean you stop stuff. You do stuff. But the stuff that you do is not, mixed. It's not so much for me and so much for Krishna. It's Krishna's satisfaction. That's bhakti. And the bhakti is liberation. Okay? You want to add to that?
I didn't want to. Well, he just commented. Thank you, Prabhu, you understood correctly.
Okay.
This is a question from yesterday, Maharaj, that Amara Mataji had asked, which we didn't get to.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. It's along the theme of the discussion. Sometimes I feel difficulty in understanding that although Krishna's mercy is causeless, but we discuss effort and mercy. So the punchline is, can effort be the cause of his mercy?
No. He's merciful with whether you're making effort or not. The sun shines whether you're under a rock or, out at the beach. Sun shining. He's merciful. And effort just means mercy, and I want to please you. So that's the effort side. Okay. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki Jai.